Welcome to this video. This is the highlights video for round 10 of the candidates tournament. Quickly going through all the games to get an overview what happened today. You can also check out the long videos, of course, for each game separately to get into more detail. Let's start with Karjakin playing white against Andreikin. Karjakin with 2 wins in the last 2 rounds. Certainly to watch out for. Maybe he's starting a big series of wins here. Let's see what happens. We got a Sicilian, and it's a Taimanov here with an early a6. Yeah, this a6 move is actually a move that is geared to fight the English attack with bishop e3 and queen d2, as Karjakin often plays. But it also allows some other things, and one of this is the capture, which Karjakin played, and now queen d3. This is a sideline that he had played before, so maybe Andreikin was actually anticipating that. Queen c7 and queen g3. This is the idea, getting the queen to g3, and black's queen c7 was actually, I think, a good reaction to get the queens traded and not allow the queen to come up on g3 just like that. So we had the queen trade, and we went to this end game almost, which had white advancing the g-pawn. This g-pawn is quite nice, it controls important squares, but black immediately fights for those squares, and white really does not have much better to capture. Queen takes, and after e5, white grabbed some space here in the center. Yeah, I think this is pretty much a position that is sort of hovering between a very slight edge for white and equality. Andreikin goes for a pretty logical maneuver. He gets the light squared bishops off. Yeah, this was traded, and now a5 is one spot that white can attack, as we will witness later. Rook b4. Yeah, here Karjakin played bishop d2. Maybe a3 was an interesting alternative here, as this move is not helping. White is threatening knight c3 and bishop e3 to trap the rook. Something like that is a pretty funny rook trap. So after a3, black actually needs to go back, and then you play bishop d2, and it's a bit comparable to the game structure, but there are still 4 rooks on the board, which maybe gives white more chances to play for an edge. This was played, and now this rook basically needs to get exchanged.
Check.
Yeah, castles. And now something curious happened, really, because here, you see, they repeated moves to agree to a draw, which I found a bit surprising from Karjakin's point of view, because well, he's on 50%, and if he wants to do anything, he needs to win a game, and well, this position is probably not like something super great for white, but he, I guess, has a very slight advantage, and why not press this? You don't risk anything, and maybe you get rewarded for being yeah, just being hard about that, pushing as hard as you can, trying to grind out a win. This is the kind of position, if you give that to Carlsen and he let him play that against one of those 2,700 guys, he will win a couple of games and lose none. And you need to try at least. I'm not quite sure why Karjakin didn't go for that. I don't see a big risk here. And yeah, well, if it at the end, if there's half a point missing, you can ask yourself, why not play out such a game? Okay, next game to look at. What am I going to choose? I go for Kramnik against Svidler. Yeah, Kramnik lost terribly against Karjakin the round before. Is on 50%, and Svidler is on -1, if I'm not mistaken, though they're both not in very good shape. Let's see what happens. The Dutch again by Svidler. He had played it earlier against Mamedyarov, so not a surprise to Kramnik, and I think a wise decision in any case to avoid the Grünfeld again. He lost so many Grünfelds against Kramnik, it's sick. So should really do something else. Yeah, and here Kramnik played the funny move e3, which is basically unknown and must have come as a surprise. Well, not the kind of move that unsettles you deeply as black. It's not very aggressive, as you can witness. Or it does not look very aggressive. Yeah, and interestingly enough, he now played the move after some long thought, b6, which I found very surprising. Why exactly b6? But okay, I had expected g6, simply in the vein of the Leningrad Dutch, as he had played against Mamedyarov. Maybe he was somewhat scared about, I don't know, maybe I'm talking nonsense here, but maybe he was scared about something very direct happening here. I don't really think it is working, but well, you never know. Could be interesting. But the normal looking move, of course, is e6. Even a stone ball is very much okay here after e3 has been played. Yeah, well, b6 was played, and now Kramnik played quickly d5, which looks really strange, but it is an interesting idea. He takes control over the central square on d5 and basically forces black now to play c6 to attack the center, and this is very much forced.
Check.
Yeah, this type of position I guess should be okay for black, but it's still, I guess, within the territory of being about equal. Yeah, he played a very quick d5 here, which I'm not so sure about. Maybe this could have been timed better. But we see after a couple of more moves. After a couple of more moves, that white retains the idea to play c4. And after bishop b4, c3 and back, he indeed played c4. Yeah, and here we have one of those cases where one drawback of the Dutch can become apparent. Well, one drawback of the Dutch is, yeah, it's the move f5, the characteristic move of the Dutch. It weakens the king side and it weakens the pawn structure here. And we see that after a couple of more moves, it gets opened up. And you can argue that white has a slight advantage here because of those weaknesses that are easier for white to attack than, let's say, the b3 weaknesses relevant for white. We had a couple of more moves. And here, Svidler played the move knight to b6, attacking the rook. In this position, it seems that the best move for white is knight to d4. Let's say queen d7 and rook c6. This is probably good for a slight advantage for white. It's not a very, very big advantage. And let's say a position that a computer would defend rather easily in. But for a human, it's not so easy to play. You sort of notice your weaknesses, and it's tricky to defend. Knight d5, probably a move that black should play here. This would have been rather logical continuation of the game, but Kramnik played the move rook to d4, which certainly will get him many diagrams in chess magazines, because now Svidler could just take on h2 and win the exchange. It's one of the biggest blunders I recently witnessed in top-level chess. It just blundered the exchange, basically, which really shows that Kramnik is not in a good shape. I mean, you could also already see that in the rounds before, but this is sort of the icing on the cake. It's really just an exchange and a pawn. White has only some active pieces left, of course, to set up some small threats, but some precise play is just giving Svidler the point. He must find rook f6, blocking the diagonal and intending rook g6, even with a counter attack on g2. And after that, it's basically over. After a couple of more moves, here Kramnik resigned. Yeah, he really just blundered it away in one move, which pretty much ends his ambitions in this tournament. He's on -1 with that. Whole 2 points behind Anand. Even if he wins his game tomorrow with white against Vichy, it's a very, very vague hope to get anywhere. And yeah, the way he's playing is not really indicating that he should win against Anand. Yeah, Svidler with this win is back on 50%, and in a way in the race again, simply because of the fact that he will play Anand in the last round, and this is probably the best possible round to play against him, because you have a pretty clear picture at this point. If just for argument's sake Svidler wins the game, then he will catch up with Anand and has this final game that might decide the issue. Okay, next game would be Aronian Topalov. And here we got a Slav defense with a6, the Chevanenko, but quickly we come to a very standard Slav position, with Aronian playing a rather conservative setup with e3 and bishop d3. The theory, even recent theory by Boris Avruk, says this is slightly better for white. But if we look at it in the game, just a couple of more moves later, it does not feel like much. White certainly looks a bit better with his space, but Topalov really quickly, if you look at this, really quickly started a play on the center with c5, attacking white's pawn. And it turned out that only a couple of moves later, he had a very decent idea for counterplay, knight over to d4. And it turned out that a couple of moves later, he really got there. After this slightly careless move, rook to d6 here in this spot, it really came to this motif, knight d4, with the back rank
Checkmate.
Now being a big problem. Yeah, white needed to retreat. And here, a couple of moves later, we already see that it's black who's got the more active position with the d-pawn. However, black also has to be somewhat cautious in a way, as he's got many pawns on dark squares. b6 will follow. And some types of endgames are tricky, like bishop endgames. So he really grabbed space on the king side and now played the move g5, which is probably giving some of black's initiative away, as it allows this regrouping. Topalov, I think, said in the press conference that he had underestimated this rook e2, bishop d2. Yeah, now we see that black has the more active position. This is just very apparent with the queen here. So Aronian goes ahead with exchanging queens. It's probably a wise decision, as here black still needs to play one or two precise moves, but we saw later, exactly here is the point where black needs to be precise. It's not rocket science, but still needs to be done. Black must play d3 here. You cannot allow king to d3. A slow move like that would land black in trouble, as white can easily put more pressure on the d4 pawn and it will fall at the end.
Check.
But he played d3, of course, and this gave black enough counterplay by far. Yeah, white managed to play this f4. But around here they repeated moves and agreed to a draw. There's simply nothing to play for. I think Aronian would have continued for a very long time if possible, but there's simply nothing to do. Even it can easily happen if you try to play for a win that you're going to lose. So the draw is pretty understandable decision. Yeah, not great for Aronian. He needs wins badly, and white games are the games where they're usually more achievable than with black. Okay, the final game to look at is Anand Mamedyarov, our tournament leader, former world champion Vichy Anand, playing Mamedyarov, who just won against Aronian, a very important game, and certainly with a win would be really in the race. So let's see what Mamedyarov is doing with black. Knight off, and again we got h3 played, the main line nowadays, at least in this tournament. Yeah, Mamedyarov is setting up his pieces in a very normal way for the Scheveningen, for the Karras attack type of position with g4. He has played h6, sort of blocking g5 for the moment and otherwise developed. And after f4 he went knight d7, which is interesting. It intends this check, and yeah, white needs to address that, and Anand did that with
check,
with this idea to interpose with the bishop. And we now got this position where we can put this on the board, where black has castled long, which is very uncommon in the Sicilian and in the Najdorf especially. Well, are there other Sicilians where you castle long? Well, sometimes in the Rouser, but it's really uncommon. Okay, it's a position that is probably about equal, but still needs to be played with some caution, mostly by white. These two pieces are very good. Bishop on e6 is nicely protected by the pawn. The knight on e5 is yeah, just very obviously a good piece. And here's a healthy structure. Only d6 is a bit weak, and the king is a bit weak. So white needs to address some points, and he did so with bishop f1. The point that he needed to address is the very terrible piece on g2, always looking at the pawn here, and he gets this regrouped quickly. See some tries at a repetition by Anand. Draw obviously suits him. King b8, black avoids that, and now we see the knight coming to d5. This is of course a main resource for white. The knight on d5 is not in any way worse than the knight on e5 for black. If black should decide to take, it's actually an interesting question, depending on the concrete circumstance how white recaptures. Rook takes makes sense to keep pressure here, but this improves the pawn structure a bit and maybe allows some bishop ideas. It didn't happen, he didn't take. And a couple of moves later, white has built up some pressure on d6. And he also, with c3, has initiated this idea. Bishop over to b3 or possibly to a4. And after knight c6, queen c4, queen a7, it is move 30. And here Mamedyarov agreed or offered a draw. And this was accepted by Anand, quite understandably so, as it maintains his lead, and white really does not have much to play for here. But the same actually applies for black. It's very tricky to make any progress. If you look at, let's say, the pawn structure, black has no pawn break whatsoever, and it's not so clear what trades are good for him. Trading on d5 is questionable. And what are you doing exactly as black to improve your position? You also have the queen on a somewhat strange spot on a7. It's, I guess, a very equal position that could have been played on, but the tournament tactics for Anand clearly indicates a draw is good. And Mamedyarov obviously didn't see a way to continue without taking too big risks, which in a way is also quite understandable. He's got the problem that he's also lost the first game against Anand, and with a win he could also even the tiebreak. It's at this position it's not really easy to do anything special. Okay, what I'm going to do now is quickly pull up the tournament table to discuss what can happen in the last 4 rounds. Just give me a second. All right, here we got a tournament cross table. I'm using the Week in Chess for that, one of the premier chess news sites. Okay, we see the tournament table here. Obviously Anand leading by 1 point ahead of Aronian, 1.5 points ahead of Mamedyarov, Karjakin and Svidler. The interesting point is the remaining games for Anand. He still faces Karjakin and Svidler, and both of them have played draws in the first round, in the first turn. So if one of them, Karjakin or Svidler, wins against Anand, they would not only reduce the distance to half a point, but also would have the better tiebreak. Svidler plays in the last round against Anand. So what I was already explaining after the Kramnik Svidler game is that, let's say Svidler wins one of his next games, yeah? He does not have any easy games, of course, but let's say he wins one of them. Now, let's say he beats Topalov, just for argument's sake. He's playing still against Topalov, and this can easily be a big fight. Let's say Svidler wins that. And if Vichy only plays draws in the remaining games and it comes to the final game, in the final round, if Svidler somehow manages to win with black, he's got it. So it's not like it's decided already. And the same basically applies for Karjakin. He also has a game left against Anand. Also with white, actually. So he also has this chance. This is why I was a bit critical, why he didn't push anymore today, because he needs one more win to get this kind of decisive game. And yeah, for Mamedyarov and Aronian, the problem is they both have those zeros against Vichy, so they have the worst tiebreak. Even if Aronian wins 2 games and Vichy draws the rest, he's out simply, because Anand has the better tiebreak. And Mamedyarov even can, if he wins out of 4 games, he wins 3, draws 1, and Anand draws all, it's still enough for Vichy. So the most realistic scenario is, of course, if Anand loses games, everything's opening up again. And this is, in fact, for the next round, even very interesting, as he will play Kramnik with black, who's completely out of shape, but well, he's still formidable normally with white, so you don't know. Maybe he gets some nice preparation in, or gets his kind of position where he can put some pressure on Anand. Okay, let's hope for interesting chess tomorrow. I'll be covering it, of course. Until then, bye.